Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into attention, specifically attention-deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. But not as just a checklist of problems,
Yeah,
more like a window, maybe a painful one, into the self.
exactly. We're looking at work from Gabor Mate, and it really reframes ADHD quite radically. We're stepping away, really, from the standard medical view that sees it as purely genetic, like a defect you're born with.
Right.
Instead, we're exploring it as fundamentally a developmental thing, something rooted in, well, in the early environment, in attachment. Our whole mission here is to understand why it might be better seen as an issue of development, not pathology.
And that shift is so important, isn't it? Because the traditional way, like in the older diagnostic manuals, it just focuses on the outside stuff, the behaviors you can see,
Yeah, they call them symptoms, but it's all external.
which misses the inside completely.
Totally. The DSM, for instance, deals in categories, boxes. But as May points out, categories don't feel pain. And if we really want to understand ADHD, we've got to focus on that internal reality, the discomfort, the pain of the person living it.
Okay, so if it's more than just, getting distracted easily,
Yeah.
what does ADHD actually feel like inside?
It's often described as this constant, unrelenting pressure. It's stressful. Dr. John Rady called it white noise, like this nonstop static inside your head.
Wow, white noise.
Yeah. Imagine this internal motor that just won't switch off. It creates this pervasive anxiety. It's exhausting.
I can imagine. Makes just relaxing seem impossible.
Pretty much. Someone described it as rarely being able to relax without immediately thinking, I should be doing something else, but having no idea what that something else is.
But it sounds awful.
It leads to this real fear almost of your own mind. We heard about an adult patient who literally carried a book everywhere, like an emergency kit.
Emergency kit.
Against what? Against being alone with their thoughts. They were afraid of their own mind, like it was this wild, unpredictable thing they couldn't trust.
So that's fear of inner quiet. It pushes you towards external chaos. That feeling that life's just unmanageable all over the place.
Yeah, that image of the guy spinning plates, right?
Yeah,
Trying to
yeah.
keep everything going until it all just smashes. That captures it well.
Chaos.
And, one man, 47 years old, he summed up his life with this kind of resigned smile, apparently, as a kettle of soup in a trash can.
A kettle of soup in a trash can.
Yeah. It just paints this picture of everything being mixed up, the good, the bad, the useful, the useless, all jumbled together hopelessly.
Okay, but hang on. What about the hyperfocus thing? A parent sees their kid zoned in on a video game for hours and thinks, see, you can focus. You're just lazy about homework.
Yeah.
How does Mate explain that? That's a huge point of friction, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That's the central paradox. And it's crucial. The main feature of ADHD is that involuntary distraction. You can't easily control where your attention goes.
Right.
But the hyperfocus you mentioned on games or something really interesting, that often involves passive attention. The mind's kind of on autopilot. The task itself is providing the constant stimulation.
So it takes less mental effort in a way.
Exactly. It's not that the capacity to focus isn't there. The brain can do it. It's more an issue of arousal and motivation.
Okay.
Active attention, the kind you need for, say, boring homework or doing your taxes, that only kicks in when the brain's motivation centers are really fired up. For someone with ADHD, getting motivated for those low-interest tasks it feels like pushing a massive boulder uphill.
Yeah.
Way more effort than for others.
So if the simple checklist definition doesn't really cut it, we need to look deeper at the brain itself.
Yeah.
If it's not just a medical disorder, Mate talks about it being like a miswiring that happens during a really key growth phase.
And the timing is just, wow. The human brain triples in size by the time a kid is 4. Think about that. 3/4 of our brain's total size develops after we're born, mostly in those first critical years.
So the environment isn't just like a background factor, it's actually building the brain.
It's the sculptor, yeah. You see this idea of neural Darwinism playing out. Neurons, brain circuits, they're all competing to survive and connect. And it's the environment, the input, that decides which ones get kept and strengthened.
And if that input isn't right?
Well, if the child isn't getting that consistent, calm, secure attachment they need, then the crucial pathways, the ones for things like impulse control and attention, they might not develop optimally. They get pruned back almost.
Are there specific brain areas that are particularly vulnerable here?
Yes, definitely the prefrontal cortex, and specifically an area called the orbitofrontal cortex, or OFK.
Okay, yeah.
This part is vital. It's like the brain's CEO. It handles emotional regulation, social smarts, self-control, and, crucially for us, attention. And here's the thing. The OFK is heavily wired into the brain's reward system, dopamine, endorphins.
Oh, the feel-good chemical.
Yeah. Right, so its healthy development really depends on the quality of that early emotional environment. It needs positive, rewarding interactions to build properly.
Which brings us right to attachment, doesn't it? The source talks about extra gestation, those first 9 months outside the womb, needing to basically replicate the security of the womb.
Precisely. That emotional bond with the main caregiver, it's not just about feeling loved. It literally programs the infant's right brain, the side, dealing with emotion and connection. And the key mechanism here is something called attunement.
Attunement, so being tuned in.
Yeah, but it's more specific. It means the caregiver signals, non-verbally usually, that their own mental and emotional state is aligned with the baby's. Moment by moment, they're responsive.
Not just physically present, but emotionally present and responsive, like that double TV experiment you mentioned from the source. That was striking.
It really shows what happens when attunement fails. You had babies happily interacting with their mums on a live video feed, but then they played back a recording of the mum's happy face, just slightly delayed, almost imperceptible.
And the babies.
They got super stressed. Even though the face was smiling and warm, it wasn't responding to them in that specific moment. Attunement was broken.
Wow.
And that's the connection. Stress, like if a parent is depressed or highly anxious, it disrupts this attunement process, and that hinders the development of those OFK circuits needed for self-regulation and attention. So if the brain structure is so shaped by the emotional climate, then we can't just point fingers at the parent in isolation, right? We have to look bigger at the family stress, the societal context that's creating it.
And Mott talks about his own family, doesn't he? Which seems, on the surface, like strong evidence for genetics. He has ADHD, his kids have it.
Right, it looks like a classic genetic case. But he links his own ADHD back to his mother's psychological state when he was an infant. This was in Budapest, 1944, under Nazi occupation. Extreme stress.
So it wasn't just genes passed down.
He argues it's also about the transgenerational emotional environment. His mother was, understandably, terrified. And he writes about how babies just soaked up the anxieties of their parents through all their senses. Even if there was love, that constant underlying fear and tension gets transmitted non-verbally.
So the emotional safety needed for optimal brain development just wasn't there because of history.
Exactly. And you see echoes today, even without a war. Studies consistently show ADHD is way more common in families with high parental stress, lots of conflict.
Yeah, I saw that stat. Biological parents of kids with ADHD having 3 times the rate of separation or divorce compared to controls. That conflict is the emotional weather the child grows up in.
And if you zoom out even further, Mate connects the rise of ADHD in North America to, well, the gradual destruction of the family concept. Basically, huge economic pressures forcing parents to work more and more.
That figure was shocking, the average work year being 158 hours longer now than 30 years ago.
Yeah, it's a massive change.
That's less time, less energy for the kind of calm, responsive parenting that builds those brain circuits. So we're not just talking about individual kids or families, but maybe societal conditions that make attunement harder.
Precisely. It creates an environment where kids might feel emotionally starved for that attuned attention, and sometimes negative attention feels better than no attention at all.
Okay, so where does this leave us? If ADHD is developmental, like you said, not just fixed pathology, the brain can change, right? Maybe talks about enriching heredity. That sounds hopeful.
It is hopeful. It means change is possible, really at any age. The focus has to shift, though. It's not just about treating or masking behaviors. It's about helping the child grow those underdeveloped circuits.
Helping them grow.
Yeah.
How?
Well, the absolute foundation is relational. It starts with what Carl Rogers called unconditional positive regard.
Unconditional positive regard. Meaning?
Meaning, you accept the child's core self, who they are, completely separate from their behavior. It's sending the message, I care about you, not just, I care if you behave well. That deep sense of acceptance creates the safety needed for the brain to start developing differently.
But what about the really difficult behaviors? The kids who seem to push back against everything, who almost seem like they're trying to sabotage things.
Right, and that's where we have to understand the why behind the behavior. Mate tackles this myth of the manipulative child. He argues that when kids manipulate or try to control situations, it's coming from a place of deep weakness and fear, not malice.
Weakness, not strength.
Exactly. They lack the internal tools, those self-regulation circuits we talked about, to manage their anxiety, so they try to control the external world instead. It's a survival strategy born out of fear.
Okay, and when they just flat out refuse that oppositional streak.
That's often what Gordon Neufeld calls counterwill. Think of it as an automatic reflex, almost neurological. It's not a personal attack on the parent's authority, even though it feels like it.
So how should a parent respond? Not with more force, presumably.
Definitely not. Meeting that resistance with punishment just triggers the reflex more strongly. The key is to avoid personalizing it. Offer empathy first. Try to understand the feeling behind the refusal. When the child feels seen and understood, the threat level drops, and that counterwill reflex often just dissolves. Then you can offer information or guidance.
This sounds like it requires immense patience.
Yeah.
And it's not just for parents, right? Adults with ADHD need to do this for themselves, this self-parenting idea.
Absolutely. If you didn't get those developmental needs met early on, the work is to provide them for yourself now. You have to become your own attuned caregiver, in a sense.
How does an adult even start doing that?
It takes conscious effort. Mate emphasizes the need for solitude and contemplation. Not just being alone, but actively engaging with your own thoughts, learning to tolerate that internal white noise without constantly needing external distraction. It's about organizing the mind.
Which sounds really hard if your mind feels scattered.
It is hard, but certain environments can help. He points to nature as having this incredibly unifying, calming effect on a scattered mind. It's the opposite of the fragmented frenzy of modern urban life.
Bring back to nature.
Yes. And also prioritizing creative expression and recreation. Not just passive entertainment like TV, but activities that genuinely refresh the mind or free the body. Things that allow for self-expression.
The very things that often get cut first when life gets busy.
Sadly, yes. Especially from things like school budgets. But for someone with ADHD, these aren't luxuries. They can be vital tools for self-regulation and, well, for feeling whole.
Wow. Well, we really covered a lot of ground here looking through this lens from Gabor Mate, seeing ADHD less as this fixed biological flaw and much more as a story. A story about development, about the profound link between our brain's wiring and the emotional safety of our earliest relationships.
It really shifts the perspective, doesn't it? And it's fascinating, even the word attend. Its Latin root, tender, means to stretch or extend.
To stretch toward.
Yeah. So the ultimate goal maybe for a child or an adult dealing with this is learning how to actively tender, how to stretch towards and engage with their own life, their own needs, their own growth. It's an active process.
That feels, less like a clinical fix and more like a deep, lifelong commitment to understanding and nurturing oneself.
It really is. And it forces us to look at some uncomfortable things. There's that Rilke quote Mate uses, which feels very relevant here. We are not supposed to know much, but it is almost certain that we are supposed to side with the difficult.
Side with the difficult.
The challenge of ADHD, seen this way, compels us to face the difficult stuff, the difficult emotional realities in ourselves and our families, maybe even in our society. The places where attunement broke down and where real, intentional, and difficult healing needs to start.